It's time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France with Solange Mougin. Solange, hello.
Hi, Judy.
So on March 4th, 2024, France became the first nation in the world to enshrine abortion rights into its constitution. Now, Solange, you're going to take a look back at how France reached this milestone, and it really is one because abortion was actually once a capital punishment offense in France.
Yeah, it was. Under the Vichy regime in the 1940s, performing an abortion was actually a death penalty crime. Two women were des faiseuses d'ange, which literally translates as angel makers. Well, they were guillotined for helping other women end their pregnancies. Now, after World War II, that changed, but it was still a crime. And a 1920 law also made informing people about contraception illegal. So thousands of women every year risked their lives to end unwanted pregnancies, and hundreds of women died every year from them.
On avait que ces moyens-là. Si on avait d'autres moyens, on aurait fait d'autres moyens. J'aurais été à l'étranger. Mais on avait que ces moyens-là.
Tous les gynécologues, tous les médecins connaissent les perforations, connaissent les septicémies, les tétanos, etc. Toute cette quincaillerie de malheur.
So then, Solange, it was a growing women's movement in the 1950s and the 1960s that began to change things, starting with contraception.
Yeah, amidst massive protests and societal change, in 1967, the Nevers law passed, and it legalized contraception. But for years, administrative roadblocks of sorts kept the pill from readily being available. And then on April 5th, 1971, hundreds of famous French women, including Françoise Sagan, Jeanne Moreau, Catherine Deneuve, they signed a letter written by Simone de Beauvoir, and this was called the Manifesto of the 343, and it was published in the Nouvel Observateur, with the women saying, quote, "I declare that I am one of them. I declare that I have had an abortion."
Avec le Manifeste des 343, on a l'irruption des femmes qui disent, voilà, c'est à nous de décider, c'est notre corps, et c'est à nous aussi de prendre la parole.
Now, a week later, the satirical paper Charlie Hebdo, they called it the Manifesto of the 343 Sluts, and the name it stuck. Case in point over how divisive and taboo this abortion issue was, and also how courageous these women were as well.
Now, the manifesto was important, but it wasn't the only thing that shifted public opinion, was it?
No, along the years of protests of the MLAC, or the Movement for Abortion and Contraception Rights, and another manifesto by doctors, there was a 1972 court case that really illustrated how views were shifting away from the Catholic Church's stance. Now, this Bobigny trial was taken on by the French lawyer Gisèle Halimi, and she successfully defended a young woman who'd been raped and had an illegal abortion, as we hear right here.
Ce jugement est quand même pas irréversible.
Vers un changement de la loi.
Now, the decision to put forth a bill that would make abortion legal was actually a very risky one at the time.
It was incredibly so. Not only had a previous bill been tabled, but President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, he did not have the votes to pass it with his own conservative majority. The job in November 1974 was taken on by then Health Minister Simone Veil, who stood up before 481 male MPs and just 9 women to plead the case for legal, safe abortions for all French women, not just those who could go abroad and get them in other countries.
Aucune femme ne recourt de gaieté de cœur à l'avortement. Il suffit d'écouter les femmes. C'est pour mettre fin aux avortements clandestins, qui sont le plus souvent le fait de celles qui, pour des raisons sociales, économiques ou psychologiques, se sentent dans une telle situation de détresse qu'elles sont décidées à mettre fin à leur grossesse dans n'importe quelle condition.
Now, Simone Veil was a Holocaust survivor, and she was very much so verbally abused at the time by the MPs, saying that what she was doing was the equivalent of gassing fetuses and of Nazism. But after much suspense in Parliament, she prevailed, and at 3:40 in the morning on the 29th of November, 1974, after some 25 hours of debate, the Veil Act was passed.
Now, since then, of course, abortion and contraception rights have expanded even more. Where do things stand today?
Well, today abortions are legal for up to 14 weeks and no longer 10 weeks. They're also reimbursed by the national healthcare system. Contraception is also free for young people. It's illegal to impede as well access to abortion and to abortion information. Women's rights groups, however, have been fighting for years for the removal of the doctor's conscience clause or the refusal to perform the act for personal reasons.
Pourquoi faire une clause spécifique alors qu'une clause générale existe déjà? C'est une forme de stigmatisation de l'avortement.
Une spécifique à l'IVG entraîne un jugement moral profond.
Now, on top of this, the French planning familial, which is the equivalent of Planned Parenthood, they say that 130 clinics have closed in the past 15 years, and access is more difficult in certain regions of France. Now, the number of abortions has actually remained relatively steady, with around 230,000 in 2022. Now, despite campaigns from the far right and also from certain religious groups, some 80% of French people, well, they are in favor of abortion rights. It is no longer as divisive an issue politically like in the US or even like it was here in France. And it's actually the overturning of Roe versus Wade that really put the wind in the sails of this constitutional push, which culminated, of course, in the word liberté, or having the freedom to have an abortion, being added to the French Constitution.
Now, the choice of that specific word, liberté, was actually much debated.
Yeah, and liberté garantie is the final word choice for Article 34 of the Constitution. They are our words du jour. Initially, the proposal was for the addition of the word droit, or right, to an abortion to be added, but this was met with a bit of pushback from the Conservative Senate. So a compromise was found after the Council of State assured MPs that the word right and freedom carried the same sort of enshrining weight here, thus allowing for this milestone in French history to happen.
It really is a milestone. And Solange, thank you so much for explaining all of that, giving us some history on French abortion rights here in France. Don't forget, if you have your own questions about France or the French, you can also reach out to Solange on social media, or, of course, check out our website, the French Connection site on France24.com.